Hey everyone, Mark Meckler, president of Convention of States, here for your Sunday night battle cry. I'm always glad to be with you. It's my favorite place to be on a Sunday night. It means I'm at home. I'm always happy to be at home on Sunday night, and it means I'm with you, which, other than being with my family, you're my extended family. It's the best place I could possibly be. So we have a call to action like we do every week on the battle cry, and the call to action this week is to make sure that you watch the presidential debate. Now, the presidential debate, sitting and watching it, to me, it's a form of punishment. So it's not that I want to punish you. So I want you to understand why. It's because September 10th, 9 p.m., this debate is likely to be the only debate between President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. Like, this is probably it. They finally agreed to the rules. Kamala Harris quit crying and quit trying to manipulate the rules to her benefit. It's going to be the two of them standing up on a stage, no notes. I like that. I think that favors President Trump. No notes, and their microphones will be muted when it's not their turn to talk. I think this is going to be absolutely incredible. It's going to be a spectacle, that's for sure. And everything's on the line. And the reason I want you to watch, and I think you should watch, isn't because I don't like you. I love you. It's because you need to know. You need to know for yourself. Because immediately, and I mean immediately, like during the debate, the spin is going to begin. And Trump's going to say something, and the left is going to spin it in some negative, horrible way. And Kamala Harris is going to say stuff, and the left's going to spin it like it's the most brilliant thing ever said. And on the right, people are going to attack Kamala Harris as the dumbest person ever to debate in a presidential debate. They're going to spin it that way. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not true. But the bottom line is you're not going to know. And your opinion is going to be somebody else's opinion if you don't watch it. And I think this is an important one. If you look at the polls, and we're going to talk a little bit about presidential polling here, it's neck and neck. And so this is going to potentially decide the election. What do I think is going to happen at the debate? Well, anything is possible. I think if President Trump is really focused, is on his best, most disciplined behavior, I think he wins the debate. I think what Kamala Harris wants to do, what her goal is to get him off that game, to get him into personal attacks, trying to abuse her, trying to interrupt her, trying to make him look like a bully, trying to make him look boorish. She's going to do everything she can to get under his skin. The best thing he can possibly do, calm, cool, collected, and go after her on policy. She's going to talk about all the things she's going to do. And when she talks about them, they're all going to sound kind of conservative to you because she's flip-flopped on all this stuff and she's trying to sound like a moderate, even though she is literally the most radical person ever to run for the United States presidency based on her record and her open statements. And she's going to deny all that stuff. And the question is, can Trump call her on it? And when she says, I'm going to lower inflation, he needs to say, you say you're going to lower inflation, but you've been vice president for 3.5 years and you haven't done anything to do that. In fact, you have the greatest inflation in the history of the country. Why haven't you done that? She's going to say, I'm going to secure the border. I'm a tough prosecutor. I was tough on crime. I was in a border state. I'm going to secure the border. He needs to say, you say that, but you've been vice president for 3.5 years. You were the border czar. You've done nothing. You have the worst, most open border in the history of the country. Why would anybody believe you? And he needs to keep going back in a very disciplined way to her record, to the things she said in the past, and asking her the question, why haven't you done anything about this? He needs to make her look like who she is, like a radical liberal. What does Kamala Harris need to do? She needs to poke, prod, jab, accuse, inflame, and try to get President Trump to lose it. She needs to make him look like a meanie. That's really got to be her whole goal. So if he stays calm, cool, and collected and stays on his talking points, I give advantage Trump if he can do that. If he can't do that, I think it's advantage Kamala. And this particular debate, I don't usually say this about presidential debates. They're usually pretty meaningless. This one, because time's so short, because she's not really doing interviews, the whole country will be watching. This could actually make the election. And it could make the election because if you look at the presidential polling, it's pretty much neck and neck. And if you look at the polling, it's hard to tell truth from fiction. Like, how do you know? One poll says Trump's up, one poll says Harris is up, one poll has them tied. It's really hard to tell. Well, I would say the thing to look at number one is look at the partisan polling. Like there are polls that are quote unquote internal polling or conducted for a campaign, conducted that are generally Democrat, generally Republican, and you can take those and you can always assume they're going to be at least slightly inflated for the candidate whom they favor. So if you want to go through them one by one, you can look at them and you can say a poll that's done for the Democratic candidate is going to be slightly inflated for the Democrat. You can also know that generally speaking, Trump has made it very hard to poll, as hard as it's ever been in the history of American polling. A lot of people who are going to support Trump don't want to say they're going to support Trump. They don't want to say that to somebody they don't know. They're embarrassed. They feel threatened. They think about J6 and what's going on to the J6ers. They think about all the political persecution and prosecutions. They don't want to tell the truth to somebody on the phone or even in an email or on the internet. And so we don't get, generally, in my opinion, the full scope of Trump's support. So I think that makes it hard to look at the polls. I think when you look at the Real Clear Politics average, you're going to get a pretty good idea. If you really want kind of what I think is the cutting edge, the very best, you want to look at Nate Silver's what's called the Silver Bulletin. And the Silver Bulletin you can look at for free. It's a Substack page. Go look up Nate Silver's Substack Silver Bulletin. He doesn't do the projecting there unless you subscribe. And it's great. His projections are great. Right now, what his projections show is there's a pretty good chance that Kamala Harris wins the popular vote and loses the Electoral College. And it's moving more and more in that direction. The big reason that Nate Silver says that is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is likely to be the state. So watch Pennsylvania, work in Pennsylvania, give money in Pennsylvania. If you live there, make sure you vote in Pennsylvania and everybody you know like you votes. Pennsylvania is probably going to be the state that decides it. And Pennsylvania has been moving ever so slowly away from Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has not had a good poll result there, I think, in 4 or 5 weeks. Since prior to becoming the nominee, obviously Joe Biden had, but since she's become the nominee, I don't think she's had a good poll in Pennsylvania. That's a problem for her. She has to win Pennsylvania. And so that's why Nate Silver is leaning towards her on the polling. Again, if you want to watch the polling, RCP, which is Real Clear Politics average, and then Nate Silver's Silver Bulletin. Those are the two that I use the most. Now, I have to say, you guys know I'm generally a pretty positive person. I'm generally very upbeat and excited about stuff. But right now, I'm going to be frank with you. I'm angry. I'm always frank with you. But right now, I'm pissed off. I'm super frustrated. And I'm just angry about politics in general. I don't normally get angry. I don't like to have that kind of attitude polluting me. I'm generally a person with a pretty cheery demeanor, but I'm angry because gaslighting makes me feel angry. Now, you might not know what the term gaslighting means. I always want to make sure people know because I run into a lot of people, they hear it, but they don't know what it means. Gaslighting is when somebody's trying to manipulate you in a way to make you think that you're not seeing what's in front of your eyes. That, when you see Kamala Harris flip-flopping and people tell you, oh, she's not flip-flopping, that's gaslighting. And it comes from a movie in 1944 called Gaslight. And it was a husband doing this to a wife. People were using gas lights in their house. That's why it's called gaslighting. And every night he would turn the gas light darker and darker. And she would say, is it getting darker in here? It seems like it's getting darker in here. And he would say no. And he was trying to make her think that she was crazy. That's what left-wing politics boils down to today. And that's pretty much all of it. Whatever you think you see, they want you to believe that that's not what you see. And it spans all subjects, right? It's about Kamala Harris flip-flopping. I want you to remember that the media, by and large, including the left-wing media, 6 weeks ago thought Kamala Harris was a complete and total idiot. And now they tell you she's the smartest, most amazing, most joyful thing there ever was. And they will deny that they ever said she was an idiot. That's gaslighting. They want you to believe what they're saying now and ignore everything that's been said to you before. And you should actually just pretend that none of that stuff was ever said to you. That's gaslighting. And why does it make me mad? Because it's just infuriating, isn't it? When somebody says to you, they hold up a cup and they say, hey, Mark, this cup is black. And you say, no, it's blue. And they say, no, it's black. No, I am definitely looking at it and it's blue. And they won't stop telling you it's black. How does that make you feel? For me, I find it infuriating. So it goes beyond, hey, we have a difference about politics. Hey, you see politics one way, I see politics another way. Hey, you're more liberal, I'm more conservative. It goes way beyond that. I know you're lying to me. And you keep looking me in the face and lying with impunity because you believe that there will be no cost, because you don't have any integrity, because you don't care whether you're honest, because power is your aim. And that absolutely infuriates me. And so right now, I'm struggling, honestly, to control that fury. I'm mad at the politicians. I'm mad at the media. I'm mad at the culture because of all this gaslighting going on. This is like when the left is telling us that we ought to censor certain things. When in human history have the censors ever been the good guys? Like, can you think of a time when, oh, it's so awesome? There was this period when there was all this censorship and it was absolutely fantastic. The government stepped in, they limited what you could read, they limited what the media could say. No, those are not the good guys. And they're telling you that those who want to censor us now, these social media giants and their government enablers, they're the good guy. Well, that's gaslighting. We know, you know, I know they're not the good guys. Censorship is not a good value. It's not a Western value. It's not a freedom and liberty value. That's gaslighting. So the reason I'm telling you that I'm frustrated and that I'm kind of furious is if you feel that way, I want you to understand I feel that way too. And I want you to understand that because you always hear me say, hey, I'm a happy warrior and I have fun doing all this stuff, even when things are dark and ugly. Well, right now I'm frustrated. And so don't feel bad if you're frustrated too, because it happens to me also. When I'm frustrated, part of what I try to do, I always go to my faith. I pray more. I pray a lot anyway, but if I'm frustrated, I'm praying more. I'm going to God and trying to turn that over to God. And then I try to turn to good culture, right? There's good things going on in our culture right now. There was a time not so long ago, 5, 7, 8 years ago, I think, in our culture when you had to go way back. You had to go back to the 1950s or something to find really good, healthy, wholesome culture. But there's good, healthy, wholesome culture being produced right now. And you and me have to support that. I don't go to the movies very often. I don't go to the movies very often for a couple of reasons. One is I just don't like going to the movies. I don't need to be in a movie theater. I can wait for it to come to my home on some streaming service, right? There's a lot of good stuff on good streaming services. Most movies I think out there suck. I think they're bad culture, damaging culture, overly sexualized, overly violenced. Is that a term? Overly violent? I don't think so. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? Too violent, too sexual, too foul, stuff I don't want to see. So I don't normally go to the movies. But this last week I went to the movies because Reagan was released in theaters. And it is a fantastic movie. And you don't have to believe me. Go to Rotten Tomatoes and look at the reviews. 98% positive rating, 5-star rating from viewers. I think it's 18 or 17% from critics. This is the largest gap in history on Rotten Tomatoes between the critics and the viewers. The viewers love it. The critics hate it. The critics are leftists. The viewers, normal people. They're not just right-wing people, by the way. They're just normal people, regular people. How do I know? I went to a movie theater. I saw the people in the theater. They were just normal people. It was a fantastic, uplifting movie about a particular period in history and a particular man who was the man for the moment, Ronald Reagan. And it's a positive story. It's an uplifting story. It's a true story. And I think you're going to like it. If you're old like me, it's going to bring back a lot of memories. Ronald Reagan was my first vote. If you're younger, I recommend you see it because you got to understand that we have had good people in politics in modern history. We have had good things happen. Good has overcome evil in modern history. And you get a chance to see it when you see the Reagan movie. And I have to say, Dennis Quaid, and I think it's Penelope Miller plays Reagan's wife. Dennis Quaid plays Reagan. Academy Award performances. I mean, these are two phenomenal performances. I'm sure they won't be nominated for anything because it's not a crazy left-wing movie about a trans midget and his unicorn or something, right? It's about real people and real people who live relatively wholesome lives. But I recommend you go see it now. It's doing really well in the theaters. Go out there, get your tickets, get it done. Here's a second thing coming out in theaters, and I don't get paid to promote this, but I'm going to say, go buy your advance tickets for Matt Walsh's movie, Am I Racist? Patty and I had a chance to see a pre-screener. We watched it with friends. If you haven't seen Am I a Woman yet, you should see that as well. Go to Daily Wire and subscribe, and you can watch that. So this is not the same movie as Am I a Woman? Like, it's a different premise. Matt Walsh goes out there and he dresses up as a guy who wants to learn whether he's racist, as he looks like a leftist professor. He's got a man bun and wire rim glasses. He's very funny. He's his usual Matt Walsh, very dry, very funny. And he goes headfirst into the DEI industry. And I call it an industry because it's an industry that's all it's about. It's about making money by creating racial division. That's what DEI is all about. And this movie exposes it in an absolutely hilarious way. Now, the people you're going to be laughing at, they don't necessarily want you laughing at them. They take themselves quite seriously because it's a major grift for them, and they make an incredible amount of money on this grift. And Matt Walsh and his team blow up this grift. One of his producers, a very good friend of mine, Sean Hampton. I love Sean. Sean's been working on this movie for a long time, day in and day out. And I've been following him as he did it. I'm going to tell you, I highly recommend you go see this movie. Robin DiAngelo, the greatest white guilt grifter in the history of the world. And she wrote the book White Fragility. She just gets burned in this movie. And it's deserved, and it's direct, and it's not mockery in an open sense. She has no idea she's even being mocked because she's in such a deep bubble. But you're going to love it. Trust me. Go get your tickets right now. You can go to amiracist.com, pre-buy those tickets, because that'll put it in more theaters. It'll make sure that it's in theaters all over the country. I think they're going to do really well with this. And I think in doing a theatrical release for both Reagan and Am I Racist, we're changing the paradigm in the culture. That's why I think it's so important that you support these things. You want movies in the theaters that you want to be able to go see or take your kids to see. You got to support the ones that are out there. And these two are breaking the mold. Am I Racist? The pre-sales are off the charts. Reagan's doing very well financially. Go see both those movies. All right, so that's supporting good culture. Here's another good thing that just happened. Well, it's at least partially good. Hunter Biden just pled guilty. I think he surprised his lawyers, surprised everybody, to 14 counts of federal tax evasion. So why? Why now? And what does this actually mean? So when he pled guilty, he tried to do initially what was called an Alford plea. An Alford plea just means I will say I'm guilty, but I don't admit that I'm guilty, which is a really weird thing. It doesn't happen in most cases. And the prosecutor said, absolutely not. We're about to go to trial. We're ready to go to trial. You're going to trial unless you just fully enter a guilty plea. And he did. So why now? I mean, he's facing many years in prison, potentially, of sentencing, right? He's facing up to $1 million in fines because this is all about tax evasion from his business. I would argue his business with his dad and his family, where he traded on Joe Biden's name. Why now? And I would argue that this is all part of the deal with Joe Biden. Joe Biden got threatened with the 25th Amendment, that they were going to remove him from office. He knew that his son was being prosecuted. And they told him, we'll let you stay in office. This is my belief. We'll let you stay in office long enough to completely pardon your son before you leave office. So what's going to happen here? He pled guilty. It doesn't matter. He knows he's never going to serve any time. He knows that his dad is going to pardon him. And by the way, that now has no political effect. I don't think Joe Biden could have done it. Remember, he promised not to pardon him, but he's going to pardon him now, and it doesn't matter because he's not running for office anymore. And Kamala Harris can even say that she doesn't agree with it and doesn't think it's appropriate, doesn't think he should have been pardoned. Joe Biden won't care. Hunter Biden will walk. He won't be fined any money. He won't do any time in jail. The crime goes away. It's all neat and clean. That's why they're doing it right now. They have to get it done before the election. That way, Joe Biden won't be president anymore after Kamala Harris is sworn in or Trump is sworn in, one way or the other. That's why they have to pardon him right now so that they can get away with this. I think that's what's going on. So that's good news in the sense held accountable for his crimes, I guess. Bad news in that ultimately he's going to get off the hook. Here's some bad news for the American economy. Walmart tends to be a harbinger for the American economy. Why? It's so big and it's so all-American and it is so everywhere. Well, it turns out Walmart is now over 38 billion. I believe it's 38.8 billion with a B dollars in debt. $38 billion in debt. Interest rates are sky high. They're making payments on that debt. It's causing them to close stores all over the country. And there are some people right now predicting that Walmart is careening towards bankruptcy. And I want you to think about what that means for the economy if Walmart goes bankrupt. What it means is A lot of Walmart stores are going to close down. They won't disappear. They'll reorganize. They'll be a smaller entity if they were to come out of their Chapter 11 reorganization, but they'll liquidate a whole bunch of stores, a whole bunch of inventory. And that means a whole bunch of people unemployed. That means a whole bunch of people in the supply chain are without jobs. A whole bunch of retail employees are without jobs, truckers without jobs. That has a ripple effect through the entire economy. So pay attention to this. Watch Walmart and whether they continue to close stores and whether they're able to make their debt payments, because I think they're in serious trouble. And I think this points to where the economy is headed. One last item before we go to Q&A. I can't close today without mentioning the hostages that were killed in Israel. So this week, the Israelis were pushing into Rafah and working to free more hostages, working to blow up more terror tunnels. Remember, I want you to remember that this is the same Rafah where Kamala Harris said she looked at the maps and that the Israelis couldn't do anything militarily in Rafah, that they couldn't do it because there were too many civilians there. They moved 1 million civilians out of harm's way like no army in the history of the world has ever done before. They made sure they're all fed. They have all got water. They've all got the medicine they need, except for when Hamas steals it. So they're in there. They're trying to clear these tunnels one by one. Unbelievably risky endeavor for IDF soldiers. By the way, they do it this way to preserve civilian life. So for those who say that the Israelis are committing ethnic cleansing or genocide, you, my friends, are just Nazi apologists from Hamas. They're doing something that's never been done before in human history. The casualty rate, by the way, right now, according to all international experts, is roughly 1-to-1, one enemy combatant and one civilian killed per enemy combatant. That's horrible. Every civilian killed, that's bad. But the bottom line is the United States average, 5 civilians per one enemy combatant. That was our record in Iraq. And so Israel is doing this better than any nation has ever done it before. And they were coming close to rescuing these 6 hostages. So what did Hamas do? Did they negotiate for the release of hostages? Did they negotiate for a ceasefire? Did they release these hostages because they knew they were going to be freed? No, they didn't. After holding them for almost a year, they put guns to the back of their heads and they blew their brains out. That's how all 6 of these hostages died. Hamas are barbarians. Let's remember, and this is very important, the Palestinian people elected Hamas. The Palestinian people, by every poll, still today support Hamas. Still today support what the Palestinians did, what Hamas did, breaking into Israel during a time of a truce, during a time of a ceasefire, killing, raping, maiming, torturing, throwing babies in oven over 1,200 Israelis. Let's not forget that. And this is Hamas's latest act of barbarity. These people are Nazis. They are the equivalent of Nazis. You want to talk about ethnic cleansing and genocide? They say it openly. They say it here in the United States. Their supporters from the river to the sea, right? That means they want to wipe out the entire country of Israel, right? That sea and that river, the Jordan River and the Sea of Galilee, that's the sea, the Mediterranean Sea. That's the sea and that's the river and that's the entire country of Israel. They intend to wipe out Israel and they intend to kill every Jew or drive them out. That is, by the way, ethnic cleansing. That is genocide. So for those of you who are out there who might be saying that the Jews are committing ethnic genocide or are complete genocide or ethnic cleansing, explain that to me. You can't. You're gaslighting. Even if you don't know you're gaslighting. Because the bottom line is the Israelis are conducting a completely justifiable defensive war. And if you think otherwise, you're either evil or you're just not looking at the facts, because those are the facts. And my heart and my prayers go out to the families of those 6 Israeli hostages who were killed. By the way, there's still, I believe, 8 American hostages being held in Israel. 8 American hostages. I want you to let that sink in. So what is the Harris administration doing to free those hostages? What are they doing? Are you hearing them put pressure on Hamas? Are you hearing them saying, we'll give Israel whatever arms it takes? Are you hearing them say that the Israelis should take territory away from Hamas and the Palestinians if Palestinians and Hamas won't surrender? No, you're not hearing any of that. You're hearing pressure on Netanyahu. American hostages. Let that sink in. You don't hear much about them in the news media. We believe at least 4 of them are still alive. American hostages being held by Hamas I actually think we should have American boots on the ground. We should be doing everything we can to free them. Meanwhile, the Biden administration, the Harris administration does absolutely nothing except for push Israel. And I think it's despicable, disgusting, inhumane, horrible, heinous. And I hope you and nobody you know supports that. All right, let's go. There's a couple things I want to promote for you before we go to Q&A, actually. I want you to take the Constitution Challenge. September 17th is Constitution Day. We all support and celebrate the 4th of July, but very few people support and celebrate Constitution Day. Most people don't even know it's Constitution Day. Now you know, so you have no excuse. September 17th is Constitution Day. Go to conventionofstates.com/1787. There you can download our pocket guide. Download the Pocket Constitution for free. You can get fun children's activity books there, right? You need good stuff to entertain your kids and your grandkids. Take the Constitution Challenge, which means read the Constitution, the entire Constitution, on or before Constitution Day. Go to conventionofstates.com/1787. Also, go to Article 5 Outfitters at article5outfitters.com. Get our gear. You can get the new Term Limits Now t-shirt. You're going to love that. I get asked about it everywhere I wear that. And also always remember that if you want to ask me a question, and you can pretty much ask me anything, go to conventionofstates.com/askmark, conventionofstates.com/askmark. And here's some questions for you. Alex asks, hey, Mark, have you seen the Reagan movie? I think we already talked about that. I saw it. It was absolutely excellent, inspiring, true to life. You should go see it immediately. Rose Summers asked this question. Are early voters already entered and verified? When does counting of the early voting take place? Early voters, I'm not sure what you mean by entered and verified, but depends on your state what the early voting rules are. But I think by next week in North Carolina, the early voters, people who have mail-in ballots are going to early voting polling places. You can do that in North Carolina. Again, I believe that's starting on the 11th in North Carolina. And so they have to be registered, of course. And so they are registered, hopefully, already. In some states, they still have same-day registration, which is insane, in my opinion. But early voting will start Pennsylvania, and then shortly thereafter, North Carolina, shortly thereafter, Pennsylvania. When does the counting of the early votes take place? This is a weird one. Usually at the end. So you get your day of voting, and then they count the mail-in ballots, the early voting, later on, which is really weird. And unfortunately, I think that allows cheating. In other words, so you say, well, here's what the day of voting is, and it looks like so-and-so is ahead. And now if you want to cheat, you can go back and count the early vote because you know how many votes you need to win. So I don't like the way it's done. I think the early voting should be counted and in the bank and done up front. That's not the way it generally works. So that's it on the early voting, except to say this. If you have the opportunity to early vote in your state, go early vote. Go do it. I know you probably don't like it. Conservatives, we tend to like to go to the polls on election day. I prefer that. Now I always early vote. I still go to the polls, but I always early vote because I want to make sure you don't miss a voting day. You got to vote. You got to go out and see the movies. You got to be out there and engage. Don't forget, watch the debate. That's 9 p.m. on Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. And my name is Mark Meckler, signing off on the BattleCry. God bless you guys. We'll see you here next week on the BattleCry.